basic topic this afternoon is Child's Garden Bible Stories, a book that some of you might be familiar with. I don't know that we have any English copies out of this part of the world that I could find, but 60 Bible stories for children. And then Lutheran Heritage Foundation had a couple of people develop a curriculum to go along with that. And that's what we want to look at as our core today. The reason, or at least one of the reasons for this, is as I was visiting schools, Lutheran schools in different parts of Asia the past number of years, I found two things. One, they said probably the most important thing we do is teach the Bible. They're very, very focused. Our Lutheran schools around across Asia are very focused on teaching the Bible to all their students. Number two, they said, and when I asked, so what are you using for materials and curriculum, they said, well, we have a Bible. And almost to a school, they said, we have no curriculum. We have some materials, we try to get things off the internet, we write our own. I just used my Bible. And it was just really shocking for me to see something that was so vital to them, and yet nothing had been developed. And I think it was simply because who's going to do it? Who's going to write all those, and who had any training, and who know how to go about doing that? So everybody was kind of on their own. We asked the pastor to teach the Bible because he knows the Bible. He might be a terrible teacher, but at least he knows the Bible, and then nobody else has to try to deal with that. So we started talking about this. Would it be possible to have a curriculum that would be like the skeleton, the basic foundation framework that could be shared anywhere in Asia, and then the people in those situations could flesh that out according to their culture, according to their language group, according to their situation, according to how many times they teach it, or how many hours, or whatever, because every situation is different. And we weren't able to find much of anything until I was introduced to this. This is not mine. This is Lutheran Heritage Foundation. I've just been asked to present, to share it with you. We have Matt Heisey here, who is from the Lutheran Heritage Foundation. I've asked him to do an introduction for 30 seconds about, so that you.
30. Wow.
Yeah. If you can do less, that'd be fine. But
okay. I'll try.
Just to give you a quick overview of what Lutheran Heritage Foundation is.
Okay. Basically, we've been around almost 25 years. With the fall of the Soviet Union, our initial work was in Russia, but by God's grace, we've now expanded to over 80 countries and 90 plus languages around the world. And basically what we do is translate, publish, distribute, and introduce books that are Bible-based, Christ-centered, and Reformation-driven. Do I still have 10 seconds?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I just came from Papua New Guinea, and I think they echoed a lot of what Dennis just mentioned. They had no resources, no curriculum, nothing really for their Sunday school classes. And so we've got 8,000 copies of this book just translated into Tokpisin, the language of Papua New Guinea, and the lingua franca there. And so now they have this opportunity, and it's a beginning because we say, okay, after we deal with children, we want to work with teens, maybe on a teen Bible study, and work our way up from there. So now that's a little, I think, understanding of what we do and why we do it, indeed. And I think just the whole notion of, I'm a big advocate of Philip Jenkins, the sociologist, historian from Baylor University, his Next Christendom book, which came out in 2002, and basically stated that Christianity is moving primarily to the southern hemisphere, and that means Asia and Africa in particular. So the work that we can do here with you in Southeast Asia, I think, is vital.
It is.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And the nice part is, a lot of things they don't charge for. Provide things free. So it's going to be very accessible to a lot of people. So what I'd like to do with you right now is to take a look at what they have produced, and just give a taste of it. If you're interested, you can have more to eat later. I don't know, we don't have quite enough copies for everyone, but yeah, okay. So we'll just walk you through part of it. This is what it looks like in printed form. How's that for something useful for people who have nothing? Can you imagine going to Papua New Guinea? The pastor there who told me, yeah, I can teach the Bible, but my Bible studies always sound like sermons. The children don't seem to enjoy that very much, but I don't know what else to do. To be able to hand him something like this and say, can you do something with that? Wow. I mean, that's really exciting. We're not going to go through all this today. We're going to just go through the first part. In fact, I'm going to skip over the very first part very, very quickly here. So, we're looking at Bible, a model, one option for this. So we'll move quickly here. Okay? 60 Bible stories for children, 25 in the Old Testament, 35 in the New Testament. It really covers the basics of everything that you might want to cover. And you could add on to that if you want to. In the book, they're presented chronologically, which I see many. Often I look at a curriculum and it starts at Genesis and it ends with Revelation, and that's fine. I mean, you can do it many different ways, but that's what we have there. So this SEA Southeast Asia Sunday School Teacher's Guide that you have a little copy there. The beginning part is really helpful. Tips for teachers. Here's how you do things. Introduction about teaching the Bible. A little bit about the difference between, you don't have copies of that. I didn't want to make a lot of copies of all these pages. But it gives maybe just a half page or something, or a page or two. Here's some hints for teaching law and the gospel, making that separation. Children you will teach. Here's what their developmental characteristics are like when they're ages 4 to 8. A lot of Sunday school teachers or even elementary school teachers have no clue about this. It's really, and it's just very brief, a little bit about intellectual, social development, physical development, spiritual. Just to give an idea, something like children 4 to 8, they're not going to sit there for 45 minutes listening to you talk. Okay, it gives them very practical things about how to teach children in grade at ages 5 to 6. Those same 4 areas, just a few comments about it or a couple of pages about it. Very helpful, practical things. And then the third group is ages 6 to 8. So we're looking at 4 to 8. But again, that's flexible. And especially when it comes to Asia, different places that those ages have different developmental levels. But it has that for the teachers. It also has in the beginning managing your group. Some are teaching and they're teaching 20 students, but they have no clue how to organize 20 students. How to prepare for that. I mean, simple, basic classroom management. What about if you've got a larger group? They might be in a school, a Lutheran school, and have 40 or 50 students in a classroom, but they may not have been taught how to organize, how to manage, how to use small groups, how to get them involved. What's in the lesson? It just outlines each lesson is going to have these basic components so that they understand how the lesson has been developed. And what I'd like to do now is let's look at a specific lesson, and you've been given lesson 1 there, God makes the world, Genesis 1. That'll be it for the PowerPoint, but I do want to take a look at lesson 1 together. And we can go through this. Most of you are familiar with a lot of the basics of how to do these things, just to show you what has been developed here. Okay, tips for teachers. What's the lesson? And what is in the lesson is lesson number, title, scripture reference, the story, the pages that you find it in the book, the central truth of the Bible story, law and gospel of it, objectives, measurable learning goals, what they will know, some materials for preparation, ideas. So there's a lot of helpful hints in presenting the lesson, and you'll see that later. If you're interested, I'll be happy to give you a electronic copy of that whole thing, 475 pages. It's easy to give it electronically if you're interested in that. Okay, lesson number 1, God makes the world. You can see the reference there is in Genesis 1. There's a central truth. Triune God perfectly and lovingly created the world and everything in it, including people. So I think the idea that we see for this, but again, it's just one idea. And what we would like to do is encourage you to have as many ideas as possible. Make this as flexible as possible. Make it as adaptable as you can to your group. This could be done at least in the 2-year. There's 60 Bible stories here. Some of those you can do in 1 hour. Some of you don't maybe have a full hour. And maybe you expand it a little bit and you make it a 2-day lesson instead of a 1-day lesson. Or you have the students do something active and creative, and so they do that on the 2nd day as a result of what they learned on the 1st day. If you're teaching it 5 times a week and your time periods are shorter, then you're just adapted to that. But going through it the first time, when they're 4, 5, 6 years old, perhaps, you might just be going through and teaching them the story. They maybe have never heard the story of Jonah. And so you want to go through and make sure they know this story and they can remember that story. Maybe use flannel graph and you use visual aids and have them act out the story. You do all these things so they just learn the story. Here's what happened. Here's how God took care of Jonah. Age 4, that's about as much as we want to give them. You go through all 60 of these stories over a 1-year, 2-year period, and then by the time they're 6 years old, now they're coming back around again. And now you tell the story of Jonah, but they know the story of Jonah, so you tell the story and add to it, what is the meaning here? What do we learn about God? How can we understand God better? Maybe that's his level you take it. Maybe even there's a 3rd time around 2 years later, you come back to Jonah again and you say, now that they're older, they're thinking, they're more logically, they're more aware of the whole Bible and the things that are going on. And now let's look at Jonah and what does that mean for my life? About how God deals with me in my life. How do I fit into that story? Who am I in that story? And take that same story, but in an organized way, and deeper each time you come around. What happens now is if every teacher decides what the teacher wants to teach, and in a 2-year period, they might be getting Jonah 5 times. And they're not getting any Elijah. They never have a clue who Elijah is. This gives that scope and sequence that'll guide them through, and then every teacher knows what it is this year, what we're supposed to teach, and each teacher can work with it. Just having that map through those years can make a huge difference for our program and for the children who are learning these things. And so that central truth, that might actually change. You might have a different central truth the 2nd time around. Okay, you might want to develop that. And again, that's the idea of this, that it gives you a starting point for your teaching. Lesson objectives, know, grow, and go. The basic points. And again, for many of you, you look at this and say, yes, this is good, but Papua New Guinea, they don't have a clue. A lot of these teachers teaching the Bible have not really been trained as teachers. They don't know how to develop a lesson plan. They don't know how to really think through and to come up with these different ideas of the central truth and objectives and how do we evaluate and all that. They're just trying to survive. What am I going to teach the students tomorrow when I've got to teach the Bible class again? And so this can be a teaching tool for you to help train Sunday school teachers or train the Christian school teachers in your community as well. Because many of them won't either know the Bible well or won't know teaching very well. And then a Bible verse that goes along with every lesson. Materials and preparation. It says corresponding materials book, but some of these things I don't know that we don't have all these pieces together. But if you're really interested in that, we can talk with LHF and see can we get really all these materials. Can we? In fact, as you go through this curriculum, you'll see it still needs some smoothing over, some editing here and there, and proofreading and stuff. But it's such a valuable tool in the form that it is right now. But it gives you some ideas there about using puppets. or other materials. And a lot of teachers are creative once they get that idea of doing that, that they could come up with their own materials or ways of doing things. By the way, just as to put this in perspective, ALEA has already said that we would like to make this as available as possible to people and to schools, and that if there is a school somewhere that says, we want this, we really want to use this in our school, that ALEA wants to send somebody to that school, and for a couple of days or whatever it takes to do a workshop with those teachers, with those administrators, and say, now let's take this and let's adapt it to your school in your situation. Let's train you how to do this and to work through a number of those so that they really feel like they have control of it. Because just to hand this out to people sometimes it is not the most helpful thing. So Bible background, again, teaching tips. And for most of you, you've got experience in training and teaching. This all makes sense. We don't have to spend time now on going through that in detail. But you can see that it's laid out so that either as you want to train some Bible teachers, it gives you the guideline, or as this is given to some Bible teachers, they would be able to find their way through this and get those ideas. You can just see how that takes the story apart, and it gives a lot of explanation. And so for someone who's not a Bible teacher, not trained well in the Bible or trained much in teaching, a teacher could go through this the first time and learn a lot about the story that they maybe don't already know even as teachers. And it gives them more than to be able to teach. It's helpful that that's been laid out so nicely already. Page 21. Told you we were going to go through this quickly. If I'm going too fast, just stop me at any point. If there's a comment you want to make or question, take a second for that. Because what I want to do is end up with some time at the end where we can do somewhere just to make sure we have covered.
Can you talk a little bit more about this idea of somebody from ALEA coming and working with the school? Are you the contact person for that?
That's part of the Speakers Bureau. Mm-hmm. And so schools that are members of the ALEA can go to the ALEA website, go into the member portal, and there's a Speakers Bureau in there. They can go in there and request a workshop for the Bible curriculum. And once that request is in there, then it would be a matter of finding out, okay, where is this place, when is a good time, who's available to do it, putting all that together. But the hope is that at any school that would be interested in doing this, that we could provide someone to go and to sit down with them. We have to figure out how many days that would take, but it would take at least a couple of days of going through this and just sit with them right in that situation. Let's make this work for you. So it would be adjusting it, adapting it to their situation, but also then training them so that they really understand it well enough so when that person leaves there, they can move forward and say, we get it, we know how to do this. They've been a part of that process.
And will it be translated into other languages like Chinese?
Can be.
Definitely
can be, yeah.
The books have been translated into, this book, maybe 20 languages or something. But there's about 7 languages that are in our region alone that this Child's Garden has been translated into already. Both Chinese, simplified, traditional, I think Hmong, Khmer.
I've got a list here, I think.
What's that? Indonesia, perhaps?
Yeah, Neos actually too, one of the local.
I actually just happen to have a couple of, there's a couple of the Chinese ones. Are these I don't know the Chinese very well.
But are the teachers' notes going to be translated?
Yes.
The teachers'
That's what we
notes
just want to talk
actually,
about.
these folks, we get copyright through CPH for the book, but the teachers' notes, we paid them to do this, so
Right.
we own the copyright.
Right.
So we can do whatever we want with it.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of identifying if that's needed. If we have, especially if the book is already in the language that you need, and then to put these. Partly would depend on, again, individual situations. If you have people who are native English speakers there who could do that not necessarily do the translation formally, but could use an English copy to do the training of your local teachers. You might not need to wait for it to be translated into your own language. If not, then that's a request you make to LHF.
To
And they,
myself or Ted Nathalan, Ganya's husband,
Yeah.
who manages our work in Southeast Asia.
and then we see what that means. It wouldn't be a real big project to do that. It's you know, the number of pages that are there and the kind of content. You would need to identify a local person who can do a good job of translating and writing it in the language that you need, so that it is quality for people to use. Yeah, but there again, the good news there, it doesn't really cost anything for people to be able to get their hands on this. So, okay, let's continue a little bit here. Presenting the lesson. Page 21. You see what they have given here is say this and do this. So for someone who's not a trained teacher, who's not any has experience even trying to learn on their own, they can just follow it the first few times through. Say this, do this, and it's very, very, very specific in guiding and directing how they do that. And then, of course, for them, they can be, any teacher can be as flexible as they want to be or are able to be. But it gives that foundational guide that says to anybody could teach this. If you can read this, you can teach this. And that, the best thing I think that does is it gives some confidence to the one who's going to do it. Okay, that they think, okay, I can follow this, and the first time they would follow it very carefully, I'm sure. But they can't, and that would work well. And then it gives the idea about songs and activities. Here's even some riddles that they can use. Some very, very specific kinds of things that can be done, especially the first time through. Okay, page 22, basically more of the same. Say and do. Very, very directional. Then as you get to the bottom, telling the story. Here's some options for how you tell the story. And maybe using flannel graphs or puppets, or maybe having somebody act it out or something. That's okay.
What songbook are you talking about when it says page 24?
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is, I'm not sure either, all of these references to other materials. We'd have to check with Ted and see, do we have those, or what are those? I'm not sure what the additional materials are. And they're probably not translated into other languages. They might just be the songbooks used in elementary schools or something like that. But this is the starting point, okay? This is step one. And if we find there's really an interest for this, a lot of places, that's when we look at, okay, now we need to develop those materials that could go along with this. A listing of the songs or recordings of the songs that would help them. You can run into language problems there too, but many places we have in our Lutheran schools people who know English well enough that they could use these English materials. We prefer that they can do it in their own language, but so many places we do have people who would be able to use these English materials and then do some training, preparation of other people in the local language. Page 23, okay, there's another option, the other puppets, story questions. You can see how there's a lot of detail here, and especially with the youngest children, you wouldn't use most of this. You might tell the story with puppets, you might do a song, sing through the song a number of times, that sort of thing. Depending on how much time you have, you might only use one part of this in terms of the presentation and the materials, which is not a bad thing, because then the next time around you've got some things that you can already have prepared that have not been used before. So page 24, the same idea there of taking them through, the teacher through, say this, just read this, have the students do this, here's another song, and even at the end on page 25, here's a closing prayer. It really lays it out in a very specific way for those who would need the most assistance and be the most nervous and such about doing it on their own. Comments, questions at this point? As you keep flying here? Yes.
Do you know the audience that they intended when they wrote this? Like, is it written with cultural concerns for Asia specifically? Is it written for people who have any background in the Bible, like students with this, or is it their first time hearing this? Do you know?
I'm not sure that it was thought out that specifically about those details. It was requested by Pastor Ted Natalong, who is the Asia regional director for LHF. He requested it. He arranged for the two women to do the translation work and the writing of it. Not the translation work, but the writing of it. And so he's Asia. His focus is Asia. I don't know that the women who wrote this, how much they were just focusing on Asia as they did it, or thinking about cultures and within a variety of cultures in Asia.
Right.
I might be able to answer a little more of that, Dennis. Since Ted knows Asia, having been born in Thailand and being born a Buddhist, Ted worked with them on this. Diane and Dawn are two former CPH employees. So they were involved in curriculum development already for Concordia Publishing House. This is something that they did, and Ted would constantly work with them. I saw the emails flurrying back and forth where he discussed with them how to perhaps put some of this thing together and give them a little bit of advice so that there might be some understanding of an Asian cultural context.
I think it can be applied quite broadly in terms of, and also age-wise. I think there can be a lot of flexibility depending on the teacher to a great deal, how much the teacher can take this and say, let's make these changes and adjustments and adaptations to the age group or to the culture. That's our hope. That's been my hope, to find something that we could say, use this in Taiwan, okay, here, use this in Japan, make it Japanese. Not just translation, but what do you need to do? Do these activities fit your culture? If not, don't do it. Do something different. But here's the guideline to get you going. And then, like I say, if you need help with a workshop, perhaps ALA can help with that in different ways. Other comments or questions? Before I go to step 2 here. So, one way in which this has already been worked on, Pastor Jeff Ehlers and his wife Cheryl are here from Phoenix, Arizona, former missionaries to Thailand. He started the Garuna Foundation, which is helping a lot in Cambodia and Thailand. The Garuna Foundation is doing some school starts in Cambodia, and they want to teach the Bible. So what they have started to do is to take this curriculum, and they said, no, let's adjust this for our local rural schools in Cambodia. We would like to make some changes on that. That's okay, I'll do this. I just walk around. Here's some samples of that. Some adjustments that they have made to the curriculum to fit their situation. Maybe it's interesting to see that, if you've seen that or not. So I'd like to just take a moment to look at that as well. And then you can compare it with the original one and see what their view is on it. And as you turn to the second page here, year 1, you can notice some changes. The first change already, a promise fulfilled. They're not starting with story number 1, page number 1 in the book. They're taking 6 stories and saying, let's first of all give the overview. Here's the story from beginning to end, or at least up through the birth of Jesus. Let's get Jesus into this right away. People know who Jesus is, so that when we start teaching the others, they've always got that connection that they can make. Nice, huh? I like that. I think that was really well thought out. And one of my concerns that as we were looking at other Bible curricula for this kind of an idea a lot of those are designed to go chronologically. And that makes sense, and that's good. The problem with it is it might be 2-3 years before they hear about Jesus. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I'm a little concerned. So this is how Denow Foundation said, let's take care of that. Let's get Jesus in there right away. And put Jesus in perspective. Why Jesus? Well, here's a few stories that tell why he had to come. Really concise, really quick, they got it right away. So then they follow the Old Testament. Now let's go back and let's take them through the story step by step. And this also gives you quite a good listing of which stories are in the book. And then they go up through the New Testament, and then in the New Testament they break it down again, even though it's kind of in order. They're identifying these are the miracles of Jesus. These are some of the teachings. Here's Easter. So they've thought this through to make it as logical and as meaningful to the teachers and the students as possible, so that they don't just get Bible stories, but they get the overall picture, and they get a little deeper understanding of how these things connect together. And I personally think that's really important, because how many times have I heard somebody say, well, I don't need to carry a big Bible around me, all I need is the New Testament because it tells about Jesus. And okay, there's truth in that, but if all you get is the New Testament, you never get the Old Testament, I think it's a little harder to figure out who Jesus is, why he had to come, why it was so important what he did. And so it's good that they can put that. And so you can see there's flexibility here, there's variations. And if we look at lesson number 1, you can see they've followed the basic idea, but they've made some adjustments again, because they're looking at Cambodia, they're looking at rural schools where people have not heard about Jesus before. They're elementary level, primary level schools. It's for young children. A lot of their teachers may not have much training, strong education background, and so they've said, let's develop this with those schools, those teachers, that community, those communities in mind. And so a lot of it is very similar. Some of it's identical, but they have made some adjustments on that. So the creation story looks just a little bit different here. Some of the objectives are the same, the truth, the Bible truth. And this is what we would encourage every school to do. Work through it, look through it, make it your own. And as Matt said, the nice thing is, any copyright that's on this is Lutheran Heritage Foundation. They're saying, use it, go for it. The book is a different situation, because that is a copyrighted book, and it's not an expensive book. How much does Child Garden cost in Thailand? 100 baht?
Yeah, 100 baht.
I think 100 baht, about $2.50. The books that you see there, that quality, the hardcover, full color, is about $2.50. That's a bargain. But for some schools, that's expensive. So, okay, maybe, if it's given free, that's outstanding. If it's not, even if they get a couple of books for the teachers, you don't have to have a book for every student. The teachers can do the materials or whatever it works in their situation. I just talked to Jeff Ehlers a few minutes ago, and he reminded me that as they developed this one for Cambodia, they've designed it that another company, I don't know which one, has flannel graphs that take you through the Bible stories. So they have this curriculum they're adjusting. They buy these materials from this company that does all the flannel graph. And in the schools where there's no electricity, they use a flannel graph to tell the stories. They tell puppets to tell the stories. If you can't use projectors and such, if you have the money to do some of those things, that's possible. And again, you don't need one of those for every teacher. Each school could have one. If it's not even for every, you don't need 60 flannel graph necessarily for every story. But as a variation, as an option for some of those things, that can be done. It doesn't really take that much. Somebody like Carol can come around, do a workshop, and say, here's how you make your own flannel graph. Carol's very good at that. How to simplify it. Buy some, you don't even need flannel, do you, Carol? You can do a flannel graph with something different. And so the more we can teach and train and open the eyes and the minds of the schools and the teachers to prepare them to do on their own, then the more this takes life and the gospel really gets out in meaningful ways to more and more children, more and more families.
Dennis. Also, they have the audio version in some particular countries, like Vietnam. We do this recording in like a live telling story with music in the background, sound effect, and turn the page. So, like for example, in Vietnam, it's ready to be used with this audio and vision.
That's through Lutheran Hour Ministry.
Lutheran Hour Ministry doing this, joining with Lutheran Heritage Foundation.
Imagine that, two Lutheran groups working together on this. Wow.
Never happened, never happened in my life.
And we got LCMS, our mission group working on. Wow.
We're intermarried actually here.
Yeah. That does help a little bit.
For us,
Family.
when we proclaim the good news to the people who not yet have heard the name of Jesus, they are considered like a child, like children.
Yes.
Because this is basic for them to study from the school. So
Yeah.
we use the same basic, telling the story, using the same age, even though they are adult. So for them, this is some completely new thing that they start to learn like a child. So that's why we're doing this on the audio and on the internet.
Not even talking about that. I've looked at the English copy of this and I find myself just kind of reading through it. It's a child's version, but it's just so simple and it's just so easy to read and it just makes such a nice story. People of any age, and especially if they've never heard this story before, it makes it very simple, very practical for them to be able to get the meaning, get the ideas of it the first time through. And that's really an important thing. So I want to leave these materials with you. You've got one variation. Gruner Foundation has done, I think, at least most of year one, if not all year. But I'm just giving you the first lesson on these to take with you. If you're really interested, I'm not set up real well for it, but if you're really interested, I have this whole big, thick curriculum on the flash drive. So if the next couple of days you would like a copy of that, let's just give you an electronic copy. You've got all 475 pages. You've got all 60 Bible story lessons prepared already. It's easier to carry back home, and then you can use it however you want. You print out whatever you need when you're back in your area. So if you're interested in having that whole thing, you're certainly welcome to do that. I don't think I can legally give you a copy of Child's Garden in English. Electronic, that would probably go against copyright. I don't know, but I don't think I want to take a chance on that. I don't want CPH to be unhappy with me. But we do, but these, in these other languages, that is Lutheran Heritage Foundation copyright. The translation is copyright. So if you need some of these books in Khmer, those are available. Those you can get. And as I say, it's been translated into a number of Asian languages already. So hopefully that'll cover some bases for you on that. So if you want a copy of the, if you want this digitally, just on your little thumb drive or your little flash drive, let me know. It just takes a few seconds to copy that over for you, and then you can take the whole thing back with you. So I think we're supposed to finish at what, 4:15?
Yes.
So we have 2 minutes. Any other comments or questions? I knew this was going to be a race. I hope it wasn't too fast, but I just wanted to give you that quick overview. Yes.
So the teacher's guide in other languages, who has that?
Nobody. It's only in English.
Only in English.
Yeah.
Requested.
Yeah.
Or requested.
And this in my hand here is the only printed copy in Asia that I'm aware of. So we hold on to this dearly. But we do have the electronic. Again, if a school or a church body says, we really want to do this, we need to do this, but we need it in our own language, then we talk to these guys at Lutheran Heritage Foundation and say, we need this translated. And then if they can't be that expensive, to come back to somebody in Japan or say, do you have somebody who we can hired to translate this, who can do a good quality translation, and that the final writing of it is clear and well written. Put that together in a few months, it's possible, and I'm not guaranteeing that, but in a few months it could be possible that you'd have it in your local language. Some of those things, even though we're Lutherans, some of those things can happen quickly. Doesn't have to go through lots of committees and lots of discussion. So.
Thank you.
Who printed those, their desks?
The books?
Yeah.
Lutheran Heritage Foundation. They
It's
translate.
Darnsutha Press in Bangkok.
Okay.
So we have a
Yeah.
large warehouse in Bangkok, so we can send it to those
Yeah.
of you in this region, Southeast Asia. We can ship it to you fairly easy.
Yeah.
Because we do most of our printing there, actually. As you can
Yeah.
see, our publisher is Buddhist, and he's the best person we've ever worked with.
Mhm.
He's better to us than Christian publishers in the way we always kind of,
Yeah.
he delays payment. We always hope that the witness comes through, but he's been a real blessing to us.
Yeah.
He's done a lot for the kingdom of God.
Yeah. God uses whomever.
He does.
Yeah, these are the only languages that from Asia that were available right now in the building in Bangkok. But translations have been done. It's just a matter of maybe more need to be printed.
Reprinting
Matt, how many languages have you done so far?
of the Child's Garden. We're 20 plus right now. I'd say about 25. I have a list. I'd have to count.
Yeah, I saw the list once, and it's
Right.
yeah.
And
some-
besides that, we actually do 100 Bible stories. We also do what is the other one?
Children's Bible?
Yeah, well, I mean, Child's Garden. There's 100 Bible stories.
Yeah.
And there's another.
Children's Bible.
Children's Bible.
Is that Children's Bible?
Could be.
No, the
I'm not
Children's
sure.
Bible.
That's in
yeah,
Japanese
yeah,
already,
yeah.
too.
I'm drawing a blank, actually.
Can you still get flannel graph? Because people want flannel graph. Where do you get flannel graphs? And the Philippines,
Talk-
they ask
talk-
all-
ask Jeff.
They ask all the time for flannel graph.
Ask Jeff Ehlers.
CPH has them.
And also,
They don't. They have a limited numbers. They have to double them. This person was Jesus last week. Today he's Joe. We need more.
No,
Just change
there's
the
a company that does it.
Yeah, yeah. When Jeff Ehlers told me that he has a company that they're using,
They keep it.
so there must be still
The
available.
states don't have them anymore. They've all-
I have no idea what the cost would be or what, how many of the stories they have or
If
whatever.
anybody has old flannel graph, give them to me.
Yeah. But talk with Jeff Ehlers and see what he's using and see if that might help.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.